Arena roguelike shooter set to the beat of the music. Sounds like a recipe for complete and utter shit, doesn't it? Being restricted to performing actions on the beat when enemies also do theirs will only lead to dying, just because the game literally will kick you in the nuts if you don't perform in time, like the guy from the Whiplash. Well, you're right. I literally had the same idea, and there is some truth to this as well. And yet, after playing it, this game fucking works! The beat, the music, the movement, the snappy animations, everything's so goddamn tight. I simply refuse to believe that this game is made by a small indie team. So then what is bullets per minute? Well, like the intro said, it's FPS game, as you can tell. It's a rhythm game, as you can tell as well, meaning that unlike your usual spastic self, you cannot spam fire button as if you're trying to masturbate with it in hopes that the bullet splooge will come quickly enough to kill whatever you're trying to penetrate today. I know that counting to 4 is super hard, but even if the fucking drummers with rock bottom IQ can manage doing that, eventually you can too. Just don't ask bass player for help on this task. We don't need an apocalypse level IQ black hole. Rather, rely on the game to help you. And by that I mean the game will slap you sideways if you're wrong. So on the beat or half beat you can perform actions, except for movement and jumping. These are not tied to the beat system. And the whole game consists of roguelike elements all over the place. Coins and keys to buy or exchange for items, opening doors and so on and so forth with items behind them. Basic dungeon crawler stuff, if you will. Each level is generated with preset rooms, and all the loot is also random. Additionally, you have attributes that increase how fast you move, deal damage, or how lucky you get. Basically, there's so much reliance on RNGs that you better drop to your knees and pray to it. Oh, and also don't forget to cup the balls for better drops, if you know what I mean. This overall is a decent recipe for pick-up and playstyle game, with decent if not good replayability, as it always goes with roguelikes. Now, despite my glowing intro, like a plastic boob job, something ain't always right. The game is rather short, only having 8 levels, which can moderately be completed in about an hour or so. And though there are different characters, each starting with different weapons, and if you complete a run with them a different ability, the game banks on very high replayability as its selling point. Now, being a roguelike with heavy RNG's involvement, it lacks, consistency. In one run you may be finding the God Anus Blaster 9000, while in the other one you may get nothing but barren, non-loot dropping levels with toughest enemies and RNG's smearing his dick in your face. Fantastic, right? So yeah, it can be quite hit and miss, especially if you just started playing, and you still need to get used to shooting on beat, let alone moving and hitting anything in the first place. Speaking of, another glaring problem could be that the game is near monochrome colored, with rather unappealing post-processing. The visuals can really iterate some folks, and that can be a make or break thing. I know. I mean, I made videos about No Man's Sky and constantly get space dads complaining that it's a toy-like eye-bleaching game. So compared to that, bullets per minute might as well be pinpoint industrial eye removal lasers. Though I am describing negatives right now, I must really say that the problem with colors can be adjusted in menu. Shifting them or turning down the effect can work. So to some degree, it can be mitigated. Still, the most problematic thing might be the music. See, like it or not, if you're going to be playing for 20-40 hours, hearing the same music and relying on it far more than any other game, well, it eventually will get boring. Though it depends on the person, still be prepared not only bleach your eyeballs till you look like an anime girl, but also scrape your ears for hours on end with the same beats until you hear nothing but satanic messaging. And as for the AI, well... Besides some exceptions, that's rather basic, and most of the time you'll be kiting and running in circles in one direction, which might not sound like the most, thrilling and challenging gameplay. Still, there is some beauty in simplicity. And as for the whole shooter aspect, well, as a coder I can tell you the developers have done very basic work on the movement code. See, when you walk up slopes and jump, your character gets launched into stratosphere. Indicating that some shortcuts have been done managing vectors. And the same happens when you can perform bunny hopping in games. Still, oddly developers have used that to the game's benefits, putting some of the secret stashes in places that you can only access through exploits in that movement code, which makes it part of the game.
Now, 2 years back when the game released with reviews coming in, the visual style I was not bothered with. I in fact appreciated it because I realized, hey, it's the best way to hide the cheapness of the game. Still, that's the right way to do a game on budget. And the rhythm gameplay coming in, I mostly was lukewarm about the idea overall. Still, it's interesting that no other game actually released this kind of a gameplay before. I realized that back in 2010s there were some attempts at doing some kind of a gameplay, but no real game actually dared to put in rhythm-based FPS gameplay. In 2020, AVE Interactive self-publishes a small indie game, which becomes absolutely fucking amazing! Seriously, when I started out I really already liked the snappy and quick movement as well as animations, but the beat gameplay on top really made that extra little thing that created this FPS experience that I've never had before.
However, learning not to completely suck was a whole different story. Being a completely musically uninclined person, thanks to this game, I realized how, unlike an average drummer that has trouble counting to 4, numbers to me might as well be alien hive mind concepts, as I could not even get past counting 1 most of the time. As I booted up my first levels, my ability to produce deadly force out of the pea shooter in hand was like watching someone attempt to perform drum solo with both arms anesthetized. Yet still, not only shooting but also reloading needs to be performed on beat, and frankly, I loved it. Genuinely. Even though I was still hitting every other beat as if half of my brain shut down out of the sheer embarrassment of how bad I was, the rare moment when you get a good bunch of shots out and then perfectly reload while the music plays felt better than slamming your face in a pile of cocaine. See, with Doom, I once said that you almost use your guns and tools of mass demon extinction as your musical instruments. Well, with bullets per minute, it's perfection of this. Your guns are music, your rhythm is the damage. It's hard to overstate how well every single element works together to craft this utterly perfect rhythm game. See, this is even more impressive considering that this is the first game the studio has made, let alone that no other game has ever come close to matching how well each mechanic is tuned. Sure, there are problems like I mentioned before, but don't be fooled, I consider every single one of them as minor nitpick and nothing else. I nearly did not even bother putting in that segment, and almost out of my critic obligation I put it in, because the game just works so well together. Oh, and to make things even better, the shopkeeper's a chicken.
Shop locally. Shop super chicken.
And to make it even better, the weapon shopkeeper is an armor chicken. Though I'm not really sure what the fuck this thing is. Now, the only thing that might be lacking for the game is mods, specifically the ability to change out the music, or hell, additional music. Cause like said, maybe I, after 200 hours that I played, I'm not bored, but you might be. And while it might not be a requisite, the game also deals with the same beat per minute throughout the whole game. There is no change or differences throughout. Though it does give consistency, it also lacks that variety. Ultimately, I could go on how certain details work together and how AI, while quite dumb and basic, still is challenging with appropriate numbers, with each having decent moveset that make me think of Dark Souls level of quality. Or hell, even the shitty fact that there is an auto-aim, even with keyboard and mouse, that you cannot turn off completely. And yet the gameplay is so well paced and adjusted that you actually appreciate it being there, and turning what otherwise would be a really disgusting feature for me into something that complements the game. Or even better yet, trailer alone, which is edited, sure, actually is 90% accurate of how the gameplay works and how snap montage style it is. And yet that's the joke, that's how cool the gameplay is.
But the simple fact is, the game is sold for $20, and there is no microtransactions or any other live service garbage that spews out of the goddamn excruciating orifices of the big publisher that constantly try to incentivize you to come over again and grind the same shitty loops over and over. And you know, in 2011, a year after release, it just kept on getting better because developers released an update, free of charge, that would be easily an expansion worthy, with a price tag on it. with extra weapons, items, characters, and a level even. Overall, it was such a wonderful piece of quality update and indeed value to the whole project that honestly, it's weird in nowadays, especially when everything is just monetized to out of a zoo, if you will. And you know, we kind of have to recognize this, well, as a fantastic thing overall, in spite of that shit industry that oftentimes spews out a lot of garbage. No, sure, you could say that, well, Doom did better than this, and it is true that, yeah, I would value Doom slightly higher, you know, Doom Eternal especially. But even so, this small indie game is on the same level, the same quality and indeed enjoyment of the gameplay overall. Not only that, it even manages to be so fucking good. It creates its own subgenre. Imagine that! Oh, and it's interesting that after my first run, I just sat there and enjoyed the credits to recognize the good work the developers did. And you know, it's good that I did, because I noticed a name that I kinda recognized, or at least I could read. And yes, as it happens, a fellow countryman from Latvia here did actually take part in making the game, so good on us, I guess. But speaking of being so unbelievably good you create your own subgenre, well, Bullets Per Minute, while created the genre, it soon might not be the only one in it. And a few games that I see on the horizons are seeming really good too.